The yesterday arrival. Commercial Flight 447 touched down at Chicago O'Hare International Airport on September 15, 2021, at exactly 3:42 p.m. Central Standard Time. Nothing unusual about that, except for one impossible detail. According to every single piece of documentation, that plane had landed 24 hours before it took off. The Boeing 737 had departed Miami at 1:15 p.m. on September 15th for what should have been a routine 2.5-hour flight. But when air traffic controllers pulled the arrival logs, they found something that defied every law of physics and time itself. The aircraft was recorded as having completed its landing sequence at 3:42 p.m. on September 14th, a full day earlier. Flight attendant Maria Santos was working the cabin that day and remembers the flight as completely normal. Passengers boarded on time, safety demonstrations proceeded without incident, and beverage service was completed during their scheduled approach into Chicago. But when she checked her phone after landing, the date showed September 14th, even though she distinctly remembered waking up on the 15th that morning. The black box data told the same impossible story. Every timestamp, every altitude reading, every communication with ground control was logged as occurring 24 hours before the plane had actually taken off from Miami. The aircraft's internal systems had somehow recorded the entire flight as happening yesterday. Ground Crew Supervisor Dennis Walsh was on duty when Flight 447 arrived at Gate B12. His shift report clearly documented the aircraft's arrival, passenger deplaning, and baggage unloading as occurring on September 14th. But Walsh insisted he had worked a completely different flight at that gate on the 14th. His memory and the official records were in direct contradiction. The passengers themselves provided the most disturbing evidence. When investigators examined their cell phone metadata, every photo taken during the flight, every text message sent, and every social media post was time-stamped September 14th. Passenger Jennifer Klein had posted a selfie from her window seat with the caption, "Flying to Chicago for my interview tomorrow." But her job interview was scheduled for September 15th, the day she remembered boarding the plane. Air Traffic Control Supervisor Thomas Rodriguez discovered the most unsettling detail while reviewing radar data. For exactly 37 minutes during the flight's duration, their systems showed something impossible. Flight 447 appeared simultaneously in 2 locations. Radar tracked the aircraft over the Atlantic Ocean, following its normal flight path from Miami to Chicago. But at the exact same time, ground sensors detected the plane already parked at Gate B12, with passengers deplaning. The 37-minute gap in continuous tracking corresponded precisely with the aircraft's final approach and landing sequence. During those crucial minutes, reality seemed to fracture. The plane existed in 2 places at once, completing its journey while simultaneously having already completed it a day earlier. Rodriguez had been working air traffic control for over 2 decades and had never seen anything remotely similar. The radar signatures were clean, showing no equipment malfunction or data corruption. 2 separate systems, operating on different frequencies, had recorded identical, impossible readings. The rewritten ownership. Sarah Mitchell returned from a weekend camping trip in the mountains to find her life completely erased. The house she had owned for 8 years was now legally belonging to complete strangers. Not squatters who had broken in, but legitimate owners with proper documentation proving they had purchased the property months earlier. David and Linda Carmichael were inside what Sarah considered her home, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture in rooms she had painted herself. They had a signed deed, mortgage paperwork, and homeowners' insurance policies all in their names. The bank records showed they had been making monthly payments since February. It was now October. Sarah's keys still worked in the front door, which confused everyone involved. The Carmichaels had never changed the locks because, according to their documentation, Sarah had voluntarily sold them the house and moved out in January. But Sarah had no memory of any sale, any real estate transactions, or any interaction with these people whatsoever. The neighborhood backed up the Carmichaels' story completely. Mrs. Henderson from next door remembered helping Linda plant flowers in the front garden back in March. The mailman confirmed he had been delivering mail to the Carmichael address since spring. Even the local grocery store had David's name in their customer database with delivery records going back 7 months. But inside the house, Sarah found evidence that reality had somehow glitched. In the kitchen junk drawer, underneath takeout menus and rubber bands, she discovered her own mail. Bills addressed to Sarah Mitchell at that exact address, but dated 1 week in the future. Electric company notices, credit card statements, and a magazine subscription renewal, all bearing dates that hadn't happened yet. The future-dated mail suggested something extraordinary. Sarah hadn't just shifted into a timeline where she had sold her house early. She had shifted into a reality where her belongings and personal records hadn't properly updated to match the new history. Like a computer glitch where some files updated while others remained unchanged. Real estate agent Patricia Wong had allegedly handled the sale, though she had no memory of Sarah or the transaction. Her files contained a complete sales record, including Sarah's signature on documents she swore she had never signed. The handwriting analysis was conclusive. It was definitely her signature, written in her distinctive style. But Sarah had no recollection of ever meeting Wong or discussing selling her home. The most unsettling discovery came when Sarah checked her bank account. 8 months of mortgage payments were missing from her transaction history. The money had never left her account because, in this timeline, she hadn't owned the house during those months. But her savings balance remained unchanged, as if the missing mortgage payments had been redirected somewhere else entirely. The missing week. Roosevelt Middle School in Phoenix, Arizona, became the center of a temporal mystery that left 847 students, 63 teachers, and 12 administrative staff questioning the nature of time itself. Everyone involved remembered attending a full week of school that, according to official records, had never happened. On Wednesday morning, October 13th, students arrived for what they believed was the normal continuation of their academic week. They had clear memories of Monday's pop quiz in Mrs. Patterson's algebra class, Tuesday's fire drill during third period, and the cafeteria serving chicken nuggets that had run out by noon. But according to the school district's attendance records, it was actually Thursday, October 7th. 7th grader Marcus Thompson carried a completed homework assignment for his science project on volcanic activity. The assignment was due Wednesday, which he believed was that day. But his teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, insisted the project wasn't due for another week because they hadn't covered the material yet. The most confusing part was that Marcus's notebook contained detailed notes from science lectures that Mr. Rodriguez claimed he hadn't taught. Principal Catherine Walsh discovered the temporal discrepancy when she attempted to access the previous week's security footage. The cameras showed an empty school building from October 8th through October 12th. Hallways were dark, classrooms were vacant, and parking lots were completely empty. But every single person in the building had vivid memories of those 5 days of normal school activities. The school's automated attendance system had recorded 0 students present during the missing week, but teachers had clear recollections of taking attendance, grading papers, and conducting lessons. English teacher Dorothy Kim remembered assigning a creative writing project about time travel, which her students had supposedly completed and turned in. The essays were nowhere to be found in her gradebook, but several students could recite portions of their stories from memory. 8th grade student Jessica Wong had taken photos during lunch on what she remembered as Tuesday, October 11th. The images showed her friends eating in the cafeteria, with the school's lunch menu board clearly visible in the background. But when administrators checked with the food service company, no meals had been delivered to Roosevelt Middle School that entire week. The most puzzling evidence emerged from student notebooks and textbooks. History students had notes from a lesson about the Cuban Missile Crisis that teacher Robert Chen insisted he hadn't taught yet. Math students had completed practice problems from Chapter 7, but the class had only progressed through Chapter 5. Art students displayed completed projects that required techniques they hadn't learned. Custodian Michael Torres remembered his usual routine of cleaning classrooms and emptying trash bins throughout the missing week. He could describe exactly which rooms had been messiest, which teachers had stayed late, and which vending machines had needed restocking. But his work logs showed he had taken vacation days during that entire period. The 4-minute loop. Jake Morrison and his best friend Tyler were driving home from a concert on State Route 89, a stretch of desert highway they had traveled dozens of times before. What started as a routine midnight drive became a journey into temporal impossibility when their GPS began replaying the same 4 minutes of road indefinitely. The loop began at mile marker 47, where their car's navigation system announced, "Continue straight for 2.3 miles." 4 minutes later, they passed mile marker 49 and heard the identical announcement again. The road looked exactly the same, down to a specific piece of roadside debris and a cactus with an unusual twisted branch. They were experiencing the same segment of highway repeatedly. Tyler first noticed their dashcam timestamp behaving strangely. Instead of counting forward normally, the clock would reach 12:47 a.m., then jump backward to 12:43 a.m., repeating the exact same 4-minute cycle. The fuel gauge never changed, the odometer remained frozen, and their phones showed identical signal strength readings loop after loop. The most unnerving aspect was the traffic patterns. Every loop featured the same vehicles in identical positions. A red pickup truck would pass them at exactly the 2-minute mark. An 18-wheeler would appear in their rearview mirror 30 seconds later. A motorcycle would zoom past on the left at minute 3:45. The timing was perfect, as if they were watching the same movie scene replay continuously. After what felt like dozens of repetitions, Jake decided to test the phenomenon. He began honking his horn at specific intervals during each loop. The pattern remained unchanged. Other drivers showed no reaction to the honking, maintaining their scripted movements exactly as before. It was as if Jake and Tyler were the only conscious observers trapped within a temporal recording. Tyler attempted to document their situation by recording voice memos on his phone. Each loop, he would describe their location, the time, and their growing confusion. But when they finally escaped the temporal trap and checked Tyler's phone, they found something impossible. 6 identical voice recordings, each exactly 4 minutes long, containing their conversation from the loops. The recordings weren't exact duplicates. Small variations existed between versions, like alternate takes of the same scene. In recording number 3, Jake mentioned feeling dizzy, but in recording number 5, he complained about being hungry instead. Tyler's voice sounded slightly different in each version, as if multiple versions of themselves had experienced the loop simultaneously. The loop ended as abruptly as it had begun. At mile marker 49, instead of jumping back to 47, they continued forward normally. Their dashcam timestamp resumed counting properly, and the familiar landmarks of their hometown appeared ahead. But when they calculated their total travel time, they had lost 2.5 hours that felt like only 30 minutes of conscious experience. The future radio signal. Amateur radio operator Patricia Valdez was scanning shortwave frequencies from her home station in Denver when she intercepted a distress transmission that would prove the existence of future timelines. The signal came through clearly on 14.300 MHz at 11:23 p.m. Mountain Time, describing a volcanic eruption that hadn't happened yet. The transmission originated from South America, with a station identifier of LU4AAA, calling for international emergency assistance. The operator reported catastrophic volcanic activity at Mount Chaltén in Argentina, with pyroclastic flows threatening the town of El Chaltén. Specific details included wind direction, ash cloud altitude, and evacuation routes being used by approximately 1,200 residents. Patricia immediately contacted emergency services to report the disaster, but officials found no evidence of volcanic activity anywhere in Argentina. Geological monitoring stations showed normal seismic readings throughout the region. Mount Chaltén, while an active volcano, displayed no signs of impending eruption, according to international monitoring networks. The transmission had lasted exactly 17 minutes and included detailed damage assessments. The emergency operator described collapsed buildings on Avenida San Martín, blocked highways, and coordination with Chilean rescue teams for cross-border evacuations. Patricia recorded every word, creating a permanent record of an event that hadn't occurred. 48 hours later, Mount Chaltén erupted exactly as described in the mysterious transmission. The pyroclastic flows followed identical paths, wind patterns matched perfectly, and evacuation procedures proceeded precisely as outlined in Patricia's recording. Even the specific building collapses on Avenida San Martín occurred exactly as predicted. But the most disturbing element of Patricia's recording emerged when she analyzed it carefully. Embedded within the emergency transmission were snippets of news broadcasts reporting the eruption's aftermath. Radio stations from Buenos Aires, Santiago, and São Paulo provided casualty figures and economic impact assessments that could only have been compiled hours after the volcanic event concluded. The news segments weren't live transmissions bleeding through atmospheric interference. They were integrated into the emergency broadcast, as if the original operator was monitoring multiple channels simultaneously while calling for help. Patricia could hear reporters describing rescue operations, government responses, and international aid coordination that wouldn't occur until the eruption was completely finished. Geological expert Dr. Maria Santos confirmed that every technical detail in the advanced transmission was scientifically accurate. Ash cloud altitude, gas composition, and lava flow temperatures all matched post-eruption measurements precisely. The mysterious radio operator possessed knowledge that was impossible to obtain without sophisticated monitoring equipment and direct observation of the disaster. Patricia's recording contained timestamps that created a temporal paradox. The emergency transmission was recorded at 11:23 p.m. on March 8th, reporting an eruption currently in progress. But embedded news broadcasts within the same transmission referenced events occurring on March 10th and 11th, up to 60 hours after Patricia had received the original signal. The forecasted face. Margaret Sullivan discovered the impossible photograph while cleaning out her late mother's attic in Portland, Oregon. Buried beneath decades of Christmas decorations and forgotten school reports, she found a family album containing pictures from her 8th birthday party in 1993. The images showed typical childhood memories: cake-covered faces, colorful streamers, and backyard games captured in faded color prints. But one photograph stopped Margaret cold. Standing directly behind her 8-year-old self was a man she had never seen before in her life. He wore a distinctive brown leather jacket with unusual stitching patterns and appeared to be watching the party from the edge of the yard. His face was clearly visible, showing a man in his 30s with dark hair and a small scar above his left eyebrow. Margaret questioned every surviving relative who had attended the party. Her aunt remembered the celebration clearly, but insisted no unknown adults had been present. Her cousin Jennifer, who appeared in several photos from that day, had no recollection of any stranger joining their family gathering. Even family friends who were documented guests swore no unfamiliar man had attended. The photograph itself showed no signs of manipulation or double exposure. The lighting on the mysterious man matched the afternoon sun conditions perfectly, and his shadow fell correctly across the grass. Professional photo analysis confirmed the image was authentic and had been taken with a single exposure on standard 1990s film stock. 29 years later, Margaret met David Chen when he moved into the house next door. The moment she saw him, her blood froze. His face was identical to the stranger from the 1993 photograph. Same features, same hair, same distinctive scar above the left eyebrow. Even more unsettling, he appeared to be exactly the same age as the man in the picture, despite 3 decades having passed. David insisted they had never met before, and claimed he had never visited Portland until accepting his new job the previous month. He had grown up in Sacramento and had no family connections to Oregon. When Margaret showed him the photograph, David examined it carefully and confirmed the face was definitely his own, though he had no memory of attending any birthday party in 1993. The brown leather jacket created the most disturbing puzzle. David recognized it immediately as his favorite jacket, which he wore frequently around the neighborhood. But when Margaret pressed him about when he had purchased it, David realized something impossible. He had bought the jacket from a vintage clothing store just 1 month earlier. The exact jacket that appeared in a photograph taken 30 years ago had been acquired decades after the picture was taken. Margaret contacted the vintage store where David had purchased the jacket. The owner confirmed the sale, but revealed something extraordinary. The jacket had been part of an estate sale collection from a house in Margaret's childhood neighborhood. The previous owner had died recently, and their belongings were being liquidated through various vintage shops throughout the city. The estate sale records led Margaret to discover that the jacket had originally belonged to Robert Martinez, an elderly man who had lived 3 blocks from her childhood home. Martinez had owned the jacket since 1987 and wore it regularly during neighborhood walks. But neighbors confirmed that Martinez had been a reclusive man who avoided social gatherings and would never have attended a child's birthday party. David's medical records provided another layer of impossibility. The scar above his eyebrow had resulted from a bicycle accident when he was 12 years old, but the accident had occurred in 1995, 2 years after the photograph was taken. The scar that clearly appeared in the 1993 image couldn't have existed when the picture was captured. The ghost platform. Shinjuku Station's Platform 7 had been closed for major reconstruction since March of 2021, with all passenger access blocked by construction barriers and warning signs. The platform served the discontinued Yamanote Express line, which had ceased operations in 1998 when newer routes made the service obsolete. But on November 3, 2022, hundreds of commuters witnessed something that defied explanation. At exactly 2:47 p.m., a full passenger train rolled into the sealed platform carrying markings for the Yamanote Express service. The train appeared completely normal, painted in the distinctive green and white colors that had been retired over 2 decades earlier. Automated announcements echoed through the station in the old format that hadn't been used since the 1990s. Commuter Hiroshi Nakamura was waiting for his connecting train when he noticed the impossible arrival. The train's doors opened smoothly, and approximately 40 passengers stepped onto the platform. Their clothing appeared outdated, with fashion styles and business suits reminiscent of the late 1990s. Several carried flip phones and newspapers with headlines he couldn't quite read. The passengers moved through the construction barriers as if they didn't exist. walking directly through solid metal fencing and concrete blocks. They dispersed into the main station concourse, blending seamlessly with the regular crowd before disappearing entirely. Nakamura attempted to follow several individuals, but lost sight of them within seconds, despite the crowded but contained space. Station manager Kenji Yamamoto reviewed security footage immediately after receiving reports of unauthorized platform access. The cameras showed the mysterious train arriving exactly as witnesses described, but revealed something impossible. The footage clearly captured the train and passengers, but showed no interaction with the construction barriers. The train appeared to be operating on tracks that had been physically removed 3 months earlier. The most unsettling aspect was the train's departure. After passengers had disembarked and vanished, the Yamanote Express accelerated normally and entered Tunnel 4, which connected Platform 7 to the Shibuya line. But Tunnel 4 had been permanently sealed with concrete barriers in 2010 as part of safety renovations. The train had somehow passed through solid concrete walls without leaving any trace of damage. Railway historian Dr. Akiko Suzuki examined the security footage and confirmed the train's authenticity. Every detail matched historical Yamanote Express specifications, including car configurations, door mechanisms, and route announcements that had been precisely documented before the line's discontinuation. The train was not a replica or recreation, but appeared to be an actual vehicle from the defunct service. Track inspection crews found no evidence of recent train passage on Platform 7. The rails showed no signs of wheel contact, and dust patterns remained undisturbed across sections where the mystery train would have traveled. Even more puzzling, electromagnetic sensors designed to detect unauthorized track access had recorded no activity during the time of the reported sighting. Tokyo Metropolitan Police interviewed over 60 witnesses who confirmed seeing the train and passengers. Descriptions were remarkably consistent, with multiple people noting specific details like the conductor's uniform style and the train's distinctive door chimes. But despite the large number of observers, no one had managed to photograph or video record the event. Investigation into the Yamanote Express's final operational day revealed an intriguing connection. November 3, 1998, exactly 24 years before the mysterious appearance, had been the last scheduled run of the service. The final train had departed Platform 7 at 2:47 p.m., carrying a ceremonial load of railway employees and transit enthusiasts, marking the end of an era. The shifted body map. Marcus Rodriguez regained consciousness in St. Mary's Hospital emergency room after what should have been a minor workplace accident. He had slipped on a wet construction site floor and hit his shoulder against scaffolding, expecting nothing more serious than bruising and embarrassment. But when medical staff removed his shirt for examination, they discovered something that challenged everything he knew about his own body. Rodriguez's torso was covered with surgical scars he had no memory of receiving. A 10-inch incision ran along his right shoulder blade, perfectly healed and clearly several years old. Another scar traced across his lower abdomen, consistent with appendix removal surgery. Most prominent was a circular marking on his chest indicating previous cardiac catheterization, suggesting serious heart surgery at some point in his past. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had been Rodriguez's family physician for over 8 years and maintained detailed medical records of his health history. Her files showed no documentation of any surgical procedures, no hospital admissions, and no indication of the medical conditions that would have required such extensive surgical intervention. Rodriguez had been consistently healthy throughout their professional relationship. When Rodriguez's wife Carmen arrived at the hospital, she expressed confusion about the medical team's questions regarding his surgical history. Carmen insisted that Marcus had always possessed those scars, describing how she had asked about them when they first met 6 years earlier. She specifically remembered the shoulder scar and had been told it resulted from childhood surgery to repair a broken collarbone. But Rodriguez had clear memories of his childhood and no recollection of any serious injuries or surgeries. His parents, contacted by hospital staff, confirmed that Marcus had never undergone any surgical procedures as a child. They maintained detailed baby books and medical records that documented only routine childhood illnesses and standard vaccinations. The medical imaging results created the most disturbing mystery. X-rays and MRI scans revealed that Rodriguez's body contained evidence of both surgical and non-surgical healing patterns. His shoulder showed bone remodeling consistent with surgical repair, but also displayed natural healing patterns that would have occurred if the injury had never been surgically treated. Dr. Walsh discovered something unprecedented in her medical experience. Rodriguez appeared to possess overlapping anatomical histories, as if two different versions of his body had been merged into a single physical form. Internal scarring indicated procedures that had definitely occurred, while bone structures suggested alternative healing processes where surgery had never been performed. The cardiac catheterization scar posed the greatest puzzle. Medical records showed no evidence of heart problems, and current cardiac testing revealed a perfectly healthy cardiovascular system. But the scar tissue was consistent with a procedure typically performed to address serious coronary blockages. Rodriguez's arteries showed no signs of previous disease or intervention. Insurance records provided another layer of impossibility. Rodriguez's health insurance had never been billed for any surgical procedures, hospital stays, or cardiac treatments. The insurance company's comprehensive database showed only routine office visits and standard preventive care throughout his policy history. Yet his body clearly bore evidence of expensive medical interventions that had somehow occurred outside the documented healthcare system. Carmen's memories contained specific details about the scars that Rodriguez couldn't explain. She described how the shoulder scar had initially been more prominent and had faded gradually over their years together. She remembered Marcus being self-conscious about the chest marking when they went swimming, and how he had explained it as resulting from childhood heart surgery to correct a minor defect. The future stub. Travis Mitchell was cleaning out his hiking backpack after a weekend camping trip when he discovered a train ticket that shouldn't have existed. Tucked between energy bar wrappers and trail maps was a pristine Amtrak ticket for the Coast Starlight route from Los Angeles to Portland, dated March 15, 2024. The discovery would have been unremarkable, except for one impossible detail. Travis found the ticket in April of 2023, 11 months before the printed travel date. The ticket appeared completely authentic, featuring Amtrak's official logo, proper security watermarks, and a legitimate-looking confirmation number. It specified Car 14, Seat 22B for departure at 11:30 a.m., with a total fare of $127.50, including taxes and fees. The ticket stock felt authentic, printed on the heavy cardstock material Amtrak had used for years. Travis contacted Amtrak customer service to report finding the mysterious ticket. After checking their reservation system, representatives confirmed that the ticket format, pricing structure, and confirmation number sequence were all accurate for future bookings. Most unsettling was their discovery that the seat assignment system matched patterns that wouldn't be implemented until their planned system upgrade in early 2024. The ticket's design contained subtle elements that hadn't been publicly released. The logo positioning was slightly different from current tickets, and the font used for departure times had been modified in ways that matched Amtrak's internal design documents for their upcoming rebranding initiative. These changes were confidential information known only to company executives and graphic design contractors. Customer service representative Jennifer Walsh escalated Travis's inquiry to Amtrak's security department when she realized the ticket contained accurate future pricing. The Coast Starlight route's fares were scheduled to increase in January 2024 due to infrastructure improvements, and the $127.50 price exactly matched the planned new rate structure that hadn't been announced publicly. Travis had no memory of purchasing the ticket and had never traveled on the Coast Starlight route. His credit card statements showed no Amtrak charges, and his email accounts contained no booking confirmations or travel receipts. He rarely used trains for long-distance travel, preferring to drive or fly when visiting Portland from his home in San Diego. Security investigators discovered that the ticket's unique confirmation number was already registered in Amtrak's future booking system, though no payment had been processed. The reservation showed Travis's correct legal name and contact information, but indicated the booking had been made through a customer service channel that wouldn't be available until the 2024 system upgrade. As March 15, 2024 approached, Travis decided to test the mysterious ticket's validity. He arrived at Los Angeles Union Station and attempted to board the Coast Starlight train using the future-dated stub. Gate agents scanned the ticket successfully, confirming it was authentic and properly registered in their system. The memory storm. The coastal city of Emerald Bay, California, experienced something unprecedented on October 22, 2022. Over 15,000 residents remembered living through Hurricane Delilah, a catastrophic Category 4 storm that brought devastating winds, torrential flooding, and widespread power outages that lasted for 3 days. The collective memory was so vivid and detailed that emergency shelters prepared for an influx of displaced families and insurance companies braced for massive damage claims. But Hurricane Delilah had never happened. Meteorological records showed clear skies and calm winds throughout the entire day. National Weather Service data confirmed no storm systems had approached the California coast during that period. Satellite imagery revealed nothing more threatening than scattered cumulus clouds and normal Pacific Ocean conditions. Yet thousands of people retained crystal-clear memories of huddling in their homes while hurricane-force winds shattered windows and uprooted century-old oak trees. Local resident Maria Gonzalez remembered the storm in extraordinary detail. She described how the power had gone out at exactly 11:47 p.m. on October 21st, leaving her family in darkness as rain pounded their roof with terrifying intensity. She recalled moving her children to the interior bathroom for safety, listening to emergency broadcasts on a battery-powered radio, and watching their neighbor's fence collapse under the force of 140 miles per hour winds. But when Gonzalez walked outside on October 23rd, her neighborhood was completely intact. The fence she remembered watching collapse stood perfectly upright. The massive pine tree that had supposedly crashed into the Hendersons' living room was still firmly rooted in their front yard. No debris littered the streets, no broken power lines dangled from utility poles, and no flood damage marked the areas that should have been underwater for hours. The shared memory extended beyond individual households to entire community experiences. Emerald Bay Elementary School principal Robert Chen remembered postponing classes for a full week due to storm damage. Teachers recalled the gymnasium being converted into an emergency shelter, housing over 200 displaced residents. The local Red Cross chapter had detailed recollections of distributing meals, blankets, and medical supplies to hurricane victims. But school attendance records showed normal operations throughout the period. The gymnasium had hosted a scheduled basketball tournament. No Red Cross emergency response had been activated, and no disaster relief supplies had been distributed anywhere in the county. Most disturbing was the discovery of official emergency broadcasts that meteorologists insisted they had never transmitted. A Freedom of Information Act request revealed 8 minutes of recorded emergency alerts warning residents about Hurricane Delilah's imminent landfall. The broadcasts contained specific wind speed measurements, flood warnings, and evacuation recommendations for coastal areas. National Weather Service Supervisor Dr. Patricia Walsh examined the emergency recordings and confirmed they matched standard hurricane warning protocols precisely. The meteorological data referenced in the broadcasts was scientifically accurate for a Category 4 hurricane making landfall in that exact location. But Walsh swore under oath that her office had issued no such warnings and had monitored no storm systems during the reported time frame. The broadcasts contained timestamps showing they had been transmitted from the National Weather Service's emergency alert system between 6:30 p.m. and 7:38 p.m. on October 21st. But system logs from that evening showed only routine weather updates and a brief marine advisory for small craft. No hurricane warnings had been processed or transmitted through any official channels. Emergency Management Director Thomas Rodriguez found evidence that his department had somehow activated full disaster response protocols without his knowledge or authorization. Computer records showed emergency shelters had been opened, evacuation routes had been activated, and mutual aid agreements with neighboring counties had been triggered. But Rodriguez had no memory of issuing these orders and insisted no hurricane threat had existed to justify such measures. The most unsettling discovery emerged from cell phone data analysis. Thousands of residents had used their devices to document the storm, taking photos of flooding, recording videos of wind damage, and sharing social media posts about their hurricane experience. But when investigators examined the digital evidence, they found something impossible. The phones contained metadata proving the photos and videos had been captured, but the actual image files showed normal weather conditions. Resident Jennifer Kim had recorded a 3-minute video that she remembered showing her flooded backyard with patio furniture floating in several feet of water. When she reviewed the video file, it clearly showed her dry backyard under partly cloudy skies. But her phone's storage data confirmed she had recorded exactly 3 minutes of footage at the time she remembered filming the flood. The memory storm represented the most comprehensive timeline shift ever documented. An entire community had experienced a parallel reality where a major natural disaster had occurred, complete with accurate emergency responses, detailed damage assessments, and coordinated relief efforts. The collective memory was so consistent and detailed that it suggested everyone had simultaneously shifted into a timeline where Hurricane Delilah had been a real and devastating event. These 10 anomalies reveal a terrifying truth about the nature of reality itself. From commercial aircraft that land before they take off to entire cities that remember disasters that never happened, we are witnessing systematic evidence that our timeline is unstable. Each case represents a crack in the foundation of linear time, proving that past, present, and future are far more fluid than we ever imagined. The question isn't whether these timeline shifts are real, but how many more are happening around us every day without our awareness.